it.
Okay.
This drama is going to be on for quite a while, and for me, it's a drama that I actually welcome. I think I've made no secret so many times on this show that I like Sanusi a lot. Um, but this cuts to the heart of something that I've always argued about, and I think I got somebody cursed my generations one time when I said what I said, which I'm going to say again. We need to make a choice about whether we want to be a democracy or whether we want to be a monarchical society. Traditional rulers, as it were, are more of
Ceremonial.
no. I'm trying to find a word away from what I used that last time. They are more of a nuisance.
In what sense?
Are we going to run a system where our leaders are accountable to the people or where they're accountable to God? We need to make a choice. So if we want our leaders, the people who actually tell us what to do, to be accountable to God, then let's just dispense with this expensive democracy and run this traditional system. Let the traditional rulers fight their wars and decide who has the biggest kingdoms, and then we will know what it is. Having said that, I wish there was a lawyer around. I don't see the point of this whole court order thing. The law has been signed. So the whole thing should have happened before. The state assembly has passed the law, it has been signed, and the truth is that however we will look at it, as distasteful as Ganduje is, and he is distasteful, the fact is he's actually gone about the whole thing using some form of due process. He probably lobbied in quotes the state house by giving them those
Allegedly.
pensions. I think
So probably, I get you.
properly
I'm just
lobbied them, and then after that they went ahead, they created the Emirs. Everything has been done quote and unquote above board. So the influence of the Emirate of Kano has been whittled down to essentially, in short, one of the best things I saw on social media last week was this parody account of the president that goes, so it puts a picture of Sanusi and Buhari side by side. Sanusi is calling Buhari, and Buhari says, Emir of Sobongari, how are you? You know, it's something funny within the whole thing, but let us again, the real issue here is what system do we want to run? Traditional rulership or democratic system? You don't see the Queen of England, who is a ceremonial leader, choke him out in politics up and down. So the moment Sanusi became emir, he ought to have transcended that. So these are issues that we will need to resolve. And Ganduje, nasty as you may want to say he is, he's just a tool in resolving these issues.
But do you see his decision or this move as...
Of course, it's a petty move, but it's not...
No, but do you see it working for the betterment of the people, which is what they've been touting as their reason, a major reason?
This is another thing that we need to get clear in this country. The elites will not fight for the people, ever. It has never happened anywhere in history. What the elites eventually fights for, if we can make them fight for it, is enlightened self-interest. So we need to find a way to make their interest align with ours.
I see. So you had a thought to share?
Okay, change my mind.
Let's move on. Very interesting stories here. This one before us is still from the Punch newspaper. 49 out of 127 Buhari Osinbajo's Buhari aides get 2.48 billion naira in 4 years. Now here they said some of them even earn above, or rather are placed above the rank of ministers. 18 of these aides are paid by donor agencies. 56 have varied ranks. Their emoluments could not be determined as at the time of compiling this report. But take us through the story and the statistics here, Uade.
Wow. 49 out of 127, 2.48 billion. So the remaining 78, how much have they paid? Have they been paid? This calls to me issues relating to transparency in governance. You must let everybody know what you're paying these aides. Everybody should be aware. Like you said, some of them are paid above the ranks of ministers. And we cannot afford to pay 30,000 naira as minimum wage. It's sad.
Yes, it's been signed into law.
Oh, yes, it's been signed into law. And so it's really, really sad. This is only 49 people. So if you calculate the 78 and extrapolate it, it probably multiply it by 3, getting to almost 7 billion that have probably been paid to just the president and the vice president aides. What happens to the minister's aides? What happens to the local government chairman?
All right. So what worries you about
what
this?
What worries me about this is there is lack of transparency in a lot of the things that are being done. When you bring in aides, do you put them on the minimum wage bracket like every other person in the ministry?
But is everybody else earning based on that minimum wage? That's the real question. Are the ministers being paid based on minimum wage? Are the senators being paid on the minimum wage?
My point exactly. You know, we cannot pay the people who go to work and deliver day in, day out. But we can pay the ministers and their aides 2.48 billion. That money can go into so many other. You don't pay. Some states haven't paid salaries for God knows how long.
Some would argue, and this may annoy a lot of people, but I'm just using for conjecture and really for you to analyze it from different angles. Some may argue that these are specialized roles, and they are, I mean, they are terminal. They are very short-lived.
The 4 years is short. I agree, but what specialty of the role do they have that you don't have in the ministries or in quite a number of these
just
places?
to add to what Valentine said, some of them are brought in for their expertise. So, and in the article, he actually states that some of these aids are funded not by the government.
Just 18 of them.
So, well, 18 out of 49. So that
18 out of 127.
So in terms
of, we're specifying the 49 because we don't know how much has been paid to the 78 extra.
I just wanted to clarify.
So let's even take the 18 out of the 127, and we're left with about 109.
Yes.
About 109. How much? So 49 out of 109, we still have at least 60 people that we don't know how much is being paid to them. This is a lot of money. I agree they have expertise in different areas, but this is a lot of money. A country that is not paying its minimum wage, and states and governments are complaining, and we're paying so much to aids for a short period. It's sad. Really, really, really sad.
All right, thank you. We'll go to our comments.
I disagree completely, Sha, but it's not my story.
No, but feel free to share your thoughts.
Cheta.
I'll be interested to hear that.
Many of these people are professionals. You want the best service, you have to get them. The real thing is, the only thing that he has said that I kind of agree with is the fact that Nigeria, and a point of correction to what he said earlier, Nigeria is not broke, Nigeria is bankrupt. Well, that's another matter entirely. So we can't afford this, which is why a lot of donor agencies are paying. But the fact, and we need to get realistic with these facts, you want the best service, you'll be prepared to pay for it. End of story.
All right, let's go on to our comments. JP, good morning. Freshly pressed. No, Cheta is so apt. You can't run a nation on emotions. The law is what it is. We aren't a monarchy. These politicians will always run self-interest, period. Emmanuel says there's nothing wrong in getting a court order against the new Emirates. The courts are there to review the process of enforcing the law, to ascertain whether due process has been followed or not. It doesn't stop at making the law. The validity of enforceability of same can be tested at the law courts.
And Role Lady says, good morning. I beg to differ with Chata this morning. Humans are social, cultural, religious, and political, meaning we can't just say we are practicing democracy and this takes care of everything. However, I do agree that the Emir does overshoot it sometimes. Thank you. Let's move on to you today for this next story from the Guardian newspaper. Probe Ngige now. That's what the headline is reading. Labour tells Buhari begins protest today. They're protesting, in a sense, they're protesting the involvement of the Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, into the affairs of the Nigerian Social Investment Trust Fund, NSITF. They went on a protest last week. They're renewing their quest to protest and really contest not the placement of Kokori as the head of NSITF, but just to get the federal government to weigh down on the Minister of Labour to hands off the affairs of the NSITF.
I mean, yeah, and that's what they've gotten to. They can say it's not about Kokori now, because if you recall, he was recently, I think it was last year, appointed to the board and then redeployed. Another name has emerged now, and the NLC guys are saying, or NLC is saying that, look, it's not even about who heads the board, it's not about Kokori now, because that may have been the initial presumption. Is about putting a board in place so that the minister, Ngige, that is, can remove himself from, or at least be abstracted from the running of this fund. Where there's no board in place, then he runs it directly and he manages it directly. And the allegation is that the reason why there hasn't been a board in place for so long and why it appears that he's opposed the establishment of the board is so that he can continue to manage the fund.
Mhm.
And it's interesting. I always wonder, like, if I wonder how many funds we have. Last week we spoke about a couple as well. It would be interesting one day I'd do the exercise and actually try to collate how many funds we
the
have.
funds.
I think it's an impossible task. Right now, this fund, it's an old fund. It was, as always with many things, we rebranded towards a Providence fund at one point in time. It's been, if you take that into account, it's been in effect since 1961, literally right after independence, and it was put in place at that time anyway to take care of the public sector was the golden eagle, and those in private sector were in private sector because they generally couldn't get jobs in the public sector, except you were working in oil and gas. So this fund was meant to help take care of their pensions, those who are ordinarily not pensionable.
Okay.
This was before the establishment of all the PFAs now. Today, it looks after workers who have injuries, fall victim to injuries at work, and it takes care of that for them. So it's a very important fund.
It takes care of, or should take care
It
of.
should, as we say, as with many things in Nigeria, it should. Now, does it? Which is why I was wondering, which is why I asked a question about the number of funds that we have. Many of them are proxies and places. Bottom line, this is when we're talking about skeletons and cupboards, this is one of those things, and lots of money goes into this one. Being that it's an insurance scheme, this is something that would be likely deducted from from your gross pay, in the hope, from everyone actually, in the hope that especially if you're in the public sector anyway, in the hope that when an incident happens, there is a fund from which you can receive recourse. Whether it functions in that way or not is an entirely different thing. So I'm with this. Things should happen properly. A fund like this should have a board. Enough with the back and forth. They should appoint a board so that we can get a lot more transparency. A lot of the stories today actually is
about transparency.
about transparency.
Yeah,
Even the one about AIDS as well. Pay for good work, for quality. You need to pay for quality, but please let us know.
Yes.
Let us not find out after.
Even Larry sent in a message here that insinuates what you just alluded to. Larry here says the amount paid to AIDS, 2.8 billion naira divided by 49 is 57 million over 4 years, and it's just 40 million naira annually. That's not unreasonable for a professional.
However, that's for 49. My point
I know.
is the
We get your point.
That's the transparency. 78 others.
That's right.
You can account for them.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much indeed. We'll go on to our next story. Cheta, I'll come to you for this one. Big story here this morning. No money is missing in CBN from the Punch newspaper. Just as a background, an online news source had released an audio revealing that the governor, or alluding that the governor and top officials of the Central Bank of Nigeria haggled over plots to conceal the loss of huge sums of monies in a Dubai investment, according to sources at the bank. Well, the Central Bank of Nigeria came out last night to refute the claim and said there was no money missing or stolen from the Apex Bank. Cheta, please take us to the story.
I don't know why we said this and online. It was Sahara Reporters. They played a tape for us. And it was a very, very nice mixed tape.
Abridged.
Yeah.
Did you listen to the tape?
Yes.
Okay.
But you see, what struck me was that, and the CBN explanation for, no matter how you cut it, and I'm not a fan of MFLS CBN, but their explanation was right. This tape and the fact that Sahara Reporters told everybody that they stole money and there was fraud is a very classic example of what happens when we have financial illiterates masquerading as journalists. And this is a problem in the Nigerian media generally. They just carry somebody that didn't do any form of economics or accounting or anything like that, and then say you're a financial journalist. And so you don't get any strain of track. The good thing about the Sahara scoop is that it forced a statement from the CBN, which, and if you look at it closer, what was being discussed on the tape is not fraud or theft, but it's interesting enough because it confirms what some of us have been saying for a while. Nigeria is not just broke. Nigeria is bankrupt. That's what this is all about. Our public finances have been in terrible shape for a while. And what the CBN leadership has been doing for at least for 4 years now is that they've been playing a high wire trapeze act just to keep up appearances. That in itself is interesting. But again, not everything has to be fraud or stealing. We're in a situation where just to keep the states afloat, They got Paris Club refunds. I sat here 4 years ago when they were saying, oh, they want to give them Paris Club. And I said, don't give to them. They gave them. The hole is getting deeper. We're still throwing money in the hole. The water is still coming. We are unable to come out. We've given loans against state shares of the ECA. And all for what? Just to pay salaries. Only on Saturday, Punch published an investigation that showed that we spent 78% of our 2018 revenue on recurrent expenditure. 78%.
Cheta, this is so. The question is, I mean, we've talked a lot about this. States cannot afford salaries.
Even federal is getting to. I mean, our first story today
point.
was about the fact that federal is shorting people's pensions
Yes.
in order to keep
so
up
what is
appearances.
the solution? Because we cannot keep pointing out the problem. Because at the end of the day, we're looking at states not being able to afford. They appeal
If
to
I give
the
a solution, then I will
presidency.
have to send Nigeria an invoice.
We'll send
No, Mbano. But what? No, I'm not the one that was elected.
Not a solution, but
a proposal.
let's look at it because we cannot keep we cannot just keep
Mbano.
analyzing.
Mbano. These days, I'm a consultant.
Okay.
Consultants will complain and point out the problem to you. And when you want solution, they will send the invoice. So
You're a citizen. If you want your country to be better, maybe
the green
you
passport is not worth very much.
So you won't give us, as a Nigerian citizen, you won't give us a proposal, not
Mbano.
the entire document.
No.
All right. So you've listened. I mean, you've heard Cheta.
Mhm.
He's mentioned it that he's not patriotic enough to give us his recommendations, even though he has a solution.
Patriotism is the last refuge of the scoundrel. I'm not a scoundrel, so
Going back to the stories
can
now.
I
Alright.
give my account number on air?
No, you can't. We'll move on to our next
You're not
story.
serious
Perhaps
then.
some of our listeners who are kind enough to send in their comments to tell
Jokes,
us.
Jetta. Jokes.
All right, let's move on to our next story. This one is from the Vanguard newspaper. Corruption allegations. Speak up. Another, just like they're saying today, full of corruption and non-transparency. Corruption allegations. Speak up on Bulkachuwa. PDP tells Buhari. Now they've called on President Muhammadu Buhari and the leadership of the APC to clear the air on allegations of corruption against Justice Zainab Bulkachuwa, who is the president of the Court of Appeal and chairman 2019 presidential election appeal panel. Take us to
So you see the things that we do that there's no other way to say it, and it's just maybe I should be cynical and say maybe keeps the rest of us busy, keeps us talking, and we just staying, we're shadow boxing, staying in the shadows, getting heated
that's
about all sorts of things.
Shadow boxing.
Imagine, and we get heated over all sorts of issues while this is like the cloak pulled over our eyes while the people who blow up the smoke leave with the prize. You get this is Nigeria
for things that are
every day.
irrelevant, and then we're talking
Exactly, and we're
things.
talking about it, and the people the puppet masters are laughing with the loot. That's the story of Nigeria, and I say the analogy, say things like this are unnecessary. You get now it's very simple. This Justice Bakachuka oversees the election tribunal. Prior to then, however, the government had raised allegations of corruption against her. Shouldn't that therefore mean that she shouldn't be appointed to the election tribunal?
Yes.
Or if she had been appointed to the election tribunal, be relieved of her duties, pending the time that the case against her can be resolved? Because what it is, or what the optics of it would be that the government in which she's supposed to oversee at least whether the election is legitimate have one leg on her neck. Do you get? Do you understand?
Yeah.
And it's undue leverage. Because that situation, we have this headline and we're discussing it today.
Yeah.
It's not necessary. So this government or this administration can cloak itself in a lot more glory. But consequently, they don't really care.
All right. I mean,
Puppet masters run things.
it's accusations and counter accusations. They've mentioned PDP
Even
have accused
optics
and
alone,
said, yes.
optics alone, allegation counter. There's no need for it. Okay, there's something against you. We raised something against you. Let's resolve that. Why would we leave you or give you such a position, a task?
All right, this one is from Daily on WhatsApp. Daily says, trim the civil service. Cheta has given a solution time and time again. Trim the civil service. Chidozie says,
Delhi, I will
Cheta,
sue
hang
you
on.
No,
I'll turn it.
Thank you for
I'm
that.
reading messages.
I will
Just
sue
give
him
me a
for
second.
copyright
Chidozie
infringement.
here says from First we are glamorizing the independence of judiciary. So why should Buhari be involved in the PDP petition against the president of the Court of Appeal And Roland says, freshly pressed, always interesting. Thank you. Please extend the time. Please bring sponsorship, all right? We'll extend it. Yinku says, I still think something was wrong with our financials. No report in 3 years, 2016, 17, and 18. Is that MFL's reward for concealing our national accounts for being
Lack
broke?
of transparency.
States need to be merged. Overhead costs are too high.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much. Cheta, I'll come back to you since they like to hear your voice, despite the fact that you did not, you refused blatantly on air to give us solutions. But
Una go vote me.
we won first of all. Insecurity, we are up to the task.
My fans have not
says,
come to beg me to run.
Cheta, let's talk about security. So Vanguard reports and actually states from a statement by the special advisor to the president of media and publicity, Chief Femi Adesina, he released in a statement. Well, that's what the report says. Yesterday, Cheta, let's look at the story. He enumerated efforts by the President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration to tackle the menace and affirmed that it was the government's responsibility to safeguard life. So essentially, he highlighted the fact that they were on top of things. Security was a big issue for them. Stop laughing. And then he actually highlighted a few of their successes. Can you please take us through this story?
Summary: they are not up to the challenge. I've taken it through the story.
No, Cheta, talk about this report. It talks about what they have done. Can you please tell us what the presidency have done?
First things first. We are in a situation where they don't even understand the problem. Our security architecture is all wrong. It's heavily centralized. It's not local enough. I'm running dangerously close to giving solutions. Invoice time?
Just go on,
Okay.
Cheta.
Secondly, we have this situation where our security system is set up for elite security, not for security of the people. So, for example, the last time I was in Kaduna, going back to Abuja, I saw people, and this one is not them, see, I saw people who were dropped at the train station there in Rigasa by security escorts. And then by the time we got back to Kubwa, the security escort, by the time I got to Kubwa in Abuja, security escorts, they wait them for there. In one case, the same people, they had hightailed it on that dangerous Abuja-Kaduna road. People don't understand. I mean, I tweeted that day that they will derail that train. People need to understand. Second, the big problem with our security thing is the availability of small arms. Nigeria is awash with small arms. They are relatively cheap. And then we have a lot of unemployed and idle young people. Do you remember that thing they said about idle minds?
Yes.
It's the devil's
So
workshop.
we have a lot of devil's workshops just roaming around the country. You see the increasing number of people coming to beg you in traffic. One day they will break that window.
No, not one day. Some of them already have started breaking your windows.
Okay.
So it's not
So
one day.
we need to actually understand it's not by coming to give platitudes. Understand what is causing it and what is pushing the whole thing, so that you can have a way of solving
So
it.
nip it from the source and not just react to it and
Exactly.
respond
Our
to it.
security system is designed to be reactive,
Yes.
not
Is
proactive.
it just security system or
Everything.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, let's move on to our next story very quickly. Wade, if you can just give us your point very quickly. Blackout looms as Labour plans power transmission shutdown. This is between the Trade Union Congress and the Transmission Company of Nigeria. What's going on, please?
So many things. First, if there is complete blackout, it means that the cost of doing business in Nigeria for the next few days is going to skyrocket. That's one. That's a major challenge here. Secondly, the only aspect that is managed by government today is the one that we're getting all these issues with between Labour and the
management.
Exactly. They've sold out generation. You hardly hear today that there is Labour unrest, distribution. Now, at the end, the general manager in charge of public affairs says that they only receive 30% of the monies from the distribution companies. Why? You pay into a central pool that is managed by government and they don't pay you, and then you blame everything on the back end. So if these people collect so much money and pay into the central pool, what happens to them? This is sad. If it happens, it's sad, but it needs to be managed.
Yes, well, the threat is for today, so we'll watch how things progress. Hopefully, they won't result or degenerate to them, causing a blackout nationally. Thank you very much, Wadi.
Dakbo Duole on Twitter here says, good morning, guys. How many private companies pay pension? Pencom, like every other federal government agency, have failed, according to him. BB from Ketu says, how can a country with so much resources be still broke? All the millions of dollars we've been collecting from World Bank and China, are we throwing them into the refuse bin or gutters?
Yes.
Let the government borrow the mind of some of our brothers just to give us solutions. It actually meant Cheta. If not, China might come and take ownership of our prestigious property. Okay, so these funds have been invested in infrastructural development so far.
Yes, our time is fast spent. I know, Tunde, you had the story for the sec, but Rotus took this earlier on today. So if people would like to catch up on that story, they could watch. But did you have anything to add to that?
Oh, well,
So
I didn't hear what Rotus said. Obviously, it's a corporate governance thing, and it's indicative of, maybe many people are not familiar with the term, but top line stealing. A lot of people think of bottom line stealing, but when they're stealing from operating, your expenses, it's top line stealing. It's one of those. It's ingrained with our. Do we need a rule to tell us not to? If you can't pay dividends, can't pay profits, why are you sharing gifts at AGMs?
Exactly.
So that's from
Thank you
Security
very
and
much.
Exchange Commission. Lagos, thank you very much for being part of the show. The Freshly Pressed 91 is still available as an podcast. If you want to listen, just go to the app, download the app on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Special thanks to Cheta at Chickstar, Tunde at Big Coves, and Wade at Ring Niger 2017. Coming up next, let's talk about Man City win at 8:15 for the locker room.
The headlines.